So several years ago, I met a woman, and at first I did not know quite what to make of her. It was just after I moved to a new town, and I seemed to run into her over and over again at different events or meetings. And every time I saw her, regardless of how I might have greeted her, if I just said, "Hi, how you doing?" Her response was never the usual, "I'm fine, thanks," or anything like that. She always replied in the exact same way. She would break into this huge grin and say, "I'm blessed." She was always so excited. And my initial response to her saying, "I'm blessed," was to say, "Oh, well, that's great." And at first, I really wondered if she was putting on some kind of an act. But then I noticed that this woman was saying, "I'm blessed," to everyone else too. So she was consistent. She was blessed all the time and to everyone. So I realized that it was not an act at all. Not only did she say she was blessed, if you gave her any opening in the conversation, she would start then listing all of the great stuff that was happening in her life. Now, at first, I found all of her persistent, chirpy happiness about everything just to be a little bit strange. I thought no one could possibly be that upbeat all the time. But right alongside my curiosity about her unending state of blessedness, I have to admit I was pretty envious of her. I think that on the whole, I'm fairly content. I have moments and days when I feel like I'm being productive or helpful, or I'm just getting to spend time doing things I enjoy and love to do with people who I enjoy and love. And then there are times when I'm frustrated and even really bummed out. In the past several weeks, I've had my share of days like that. It's safe to say we all have. Because we can't do all the things we enjoy or be with everyone we enjoy and love, at least not in person. And life is just so darn weird right now. I mean, we're living in the middle of a pandemic, for Pete's sake, and it's downright worrisome. So we're anxious and we're grieving. It might even feel, in this present moment, somehow inappropriate to even say we're blessed when so many people are suffering from all kinds of insecurity and stress and sorrow. But take a moment and imagine with me a time before COVID-19. In that world, not so long ago, even under normal circumstances, there could be moments when we're facing a deadline and nothing seems to be falling into place, or something truly sad's happened and we feel depressed, or maybe we've done something that's let somebody down, or someone's done or said something really hurtful to us. So even when things are perfectly normal, we always live with this blend of circumstances that are happy or not so happy. Life just seems to be a balancing act that way, doesn't it? And we hope to find ourselves walking on the happy side of the street more often than not. But then we can occasionally come across people like this woman who always says she's blessed. Now we have to assume she has a firm grip on reality and she's fully aware of all the troubling things out there. All we know is the end result. She's always attending happy camp. So how does that work? Well, the blessed woman I met all those years ago actually gave me a tremendous gift. She started me on a journey to discover why some people are so much happier than others. And I found out that happiness is actually the subject of some serious academic study. There's a Harvard psychology professor whose name is Sean Achor, and he wrote a fantastic book based on his findings called The Happiness Advantage. It's an awesome book about what makes us tick, and I highly recommend it. And what I discovered when reading books like The Happiness Advantage and talking with consistently happy people, and that blessed woman in particular, is that a very familiar pattern emerged. And that same pattern is also very obvious in the Bible and in other sacred literature. Now, a few minutes ago, Adam read parts of Psalm 116. Now, this is a very personal psalm, a very personal expression of the writer. This writer has been through a lot of stress and grief. She has cried for mercy. She's been surrounded by threat by the threat of death. She knows trouble and sadness. So it's not a pretty picture. She has a long list of legitimate things to complain about. But then there's a turning point. As she expresses her anguish, she understands that God is listening, the compassionate, merciful God of the universe. And in that splendid awareness that we are never alone, and that no matter what happens, we are cared for and we are loved, a transformation occurs. Instead of counting her troubles, her eyes are opened to all that's good and healing and hopeful in her life. And that opens up for her a profound sense of gratitude. She awakens to being blessed. And that's perfectly consistent with all the studies that have been done on happiness. Whatever the reality of anyone's life might be, people who are happy intentionally and eagerly focus on, and they list all of the positive stuff going on in their lives. And the result is they are grateful, consistently, persistently grateful. They feel blessed. Now, if all that sounds trite or just too simplistic or unrealistic, or if you find that it's a challenge to be grateful in the midst of everything going on, I have a suggestion. And it starts with rethinking the whole notion of what defines reality. Now, by default, we think of reality as everything that is external. It's tangible. It's the stuff outside of ourselves, the weather, our income, the people we live with and work with, the economy. Our reality right now is that we're living in an unprecedented moment in history when things are uncertain and scary. All of that's very tangible. We see it, we hear it every day. So all of that forms our external physical reality. But we also know there's an inner reality, the place where our thoughts and beliefs and feelings live. Now, our inner world might appear to be less tangible than the outer world of reality, but the truth is, our inner world is where we really live. And it's not that our external reality doesn't affect our inner world, it does constantly. That's why when we're unhappy about something, we almost always first try to change the external reality we believe is affecting us in a negative way. It's kind of like this. If my shoes are too tight and I'm uncomfortable, my first impulse is to take off my shoes. Then I'll be happy. And so that becomes our approach to almost everything that causes us discomfort or unhappiness. We think, well, I'll just change or fix this external problem and everything will be okay on the inside. And in some cases, that does work. It's simple cause and effect. But the thing is, we know that life is complex. There's often nothing simple at all about cause and effect. Real life cannot always be figured out by approaching it like some kind of a math problem. But we try to do that all the time. We'll say things like, I'll just take this person's irritating behavior divided by my perfectly rational response, plus avoiding them times two, and then we'll arrive at that person continuing to irritate the tar out of me. And our experience tells us that much of the time, even if we can solve an external problem, and it might bring us temporary relief, other problems have a way of cropping up like weeds to take their place. And the accumulation of all that causes us stress because we're simply not able to fix or control everything that's external. I came across this image the other day online. I've been looking for that button everywhere I go. Can't find it. I once had a boss, and he was always super stressed out, and one of his typical complaints was that he spent all of his time running around putting out fires. I mean, not actual fires, of course, but he viewed his reality as this ongoing series of problems that he had to fix, and there was no way he could ever manage to do all the fixing he needed to do, so he wound up stressing himself right into having a heart attack, literally. He told me, in not so many words, that his world was out of control. And that's the big problem with external reality. Quite often, it is completely beyond our control. But my boss's heart attack was a real wake-up call for him. Thankfully, he learned an important lesson about the way we're made. and that so often we approach reality from the wrong perspective completely. We assume we ought to be able to control something that we just can't control, and that makes us feel lousy and incomplete, irritated, frustrated. We're focused so much on the external, we neglect our internal state of being, which really ought to be our first priority because that's where we really live, and it needs our regular care and maintenance. And the best part of knowing that is, unless we suffer from a significant mental health or emotional issue, our internal reality is something we do have control over. For instance, we might say, that guy made me mad because he cut me off in traffic. But really? Cutting you off might have been rude or irresponsible or even dangerous of him, but his action was not something you had any control over. But what you do have complete control over is how you feel about his action, how you respond to it. He didn't make you angry, any more than he can make you enjoy watching a sunset. You chose to do that yourself. Now, it's only natural to feel alarmed at something like being cut off in traffic, but your response could have been, I choose not to be angry because I have the freedom to choose how I respond internally to any external circumstance. Now, I'm not suggesting that we all become doormats for every rude or threatening person that comes along. I am suggesting it matters a great deal that we cultivate an awareness of our inner reality, to take our temperature of how we are feeling, and to understand that feeling good, being happy, and finding peace is within our control. Our inner world can create our outer world. And very importantly, we need to know that there's a basic exercise, a practice we can all follow to make that real, to enhance that inner life where we really live. And it has everything to do with gratitude. And just like the writer of Psalm 116, knowing that we are loved and cared for unconditionally, and opening our eyes to all of the good that surrounds us. So to be grateful, we can begin by simply reflecting on what we have right now in the present moment that is good in our lives. It's different for each of us, but how about starting with the gift of life itself? The psalmist did that. How about saying thank you for every breath we take? How about including the people we love, the relationships we cherish, the people we know who care for and love us? How about acknowledging that God loves and cares for us more than we can ever imagine? And from there, that circle of goodness can expand to gratitude for the talents and abilities we all possess, especially if we understand our talents and abilities as things that we can invest in other people and in other causes beyond our own needs, by getting outside of ourselves. Gratitude is also an intentional decision to seek out the good in every person we meet. It's the natural result of believing in the possibility that good does exist in everyone. But it's also not just believing in that. We also need to acknowledge that good, to let it be known to them by giving thanks, by saying those two very powerful, simple words, thank you. To acknowledge someone's goodness is so significant. You're communicating that what they've done and who they are has positive meaning and value. And when we're on the receiving end of that kind of positive validation, what happens? We're compelled to do more, do even better, work harder, and feel great about it because we know it matters. So that becomes our internal reality, our picture of ourselves and how we're doing and how we're feeling. Gratitude also leads to growing in compassion and caring. Saying thank you draws us closer to one another. We're affirming that we share the same spirit that knits all of us together, that what affects one of us affects all of us. And when we express gratitude, we're not just affirming someone else, we're reflecting our own inner reality. We're counting our blessings. Our inner reality matters. It's what we can control. We can't change the past, and there will always be limits on what we can do to affect the external reality of the present and the future. And that's why keeping an inventory of all we're grateful for is really transformative. It is the best antidote for anything we think we're lacking any limitation, any negative experience. It's very hard to feel deprived, while at the same time being aware of all of the abundance of the great stuff in our lives. So it only makes sense and is so powerful for our own happiness and peace and the happiness and peace of people we love and care for to create a space in our hearts and minds to genuinely appreciate all that we have, to be grateful, to know that we are blessed, so that we can live more joyfully in the present moment, especially in a moment like this.